Recording in progress.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to School of Speech, presented by Speech Therapy PD. School of Speech is the podcast designed specifically for all of us school-based SLPs to come together. We are learning boldly, we are thinking critically, and we are celebrating the incredible work that we are doing every single day in our schools. I'm your host, Carolyn Dolby, and I am so glad you are here. I know you're going to be glad too, because we are diving into a topic that every single SLP, I don't care who you are, every single school-based SLP thinks about constantly. Data collection. I know. Let's be honest, right? Between therapy sessions, IEP meetings, evaluations, documentation, right? We're trying to do everything just to make it to get to lunch before 3 p.m., right? I guess that's dinner. Really, when do we get to eat? We need to find efficient ways to collect and use meaningful data collection that can really feel overwhelming, right? So what if, hang on there, listen up. What if your data systems could actually save you time instead of cost you time? Yeah, you heard me. Yeah, that's exactly what we are talking about today. Our title today is Data Without the Drama. Well, I'll be dramatic, but it will be Data Without the Drama, Streamlining Systems That Save you Time. And I am so thrilled, over the moon thrilled to welcome Michele Rothstein Bierstein. I did it! I didn't do it. It's Michele Rothstein. And I was joking before that I have to go Bierstein. Like, yeah. So Michele.
Okay.
Oh my God, I'm just being goofball. All right, let me just tell you about Michele. Hi, Michele.
Hi, Carolyn.
She's amazing. She is a school-based SLP with over 26 years of experience in working in elementary schools, serving students through grades K through 6. But that's not all she does, people. She does more than that. She is the founder of SLP Madness, where she serves as a consultant and coach, helping school-based SLPs develop practical systems for caseload management, documentation, and efficient data collection. Her work focuses on helping clinicians build simple systems that support accurate data clear progress monitoring, and manageable workloads. All right, Michele, hey, thanks for bearing with me on that. I know I
Oh my goodness, thank you for having me.
No, we are so thrilled to have you here. Okay, before we jump in, I have just a little bit more housekeeping. Y'all don't forget that
Sure.
every single episode of School of Speech is offered for 0.1 ASHA CEUs through your Speech Therapy PD account, because as I say, learning should count. Now, if you're here live with me and us, thank you so much. We are so glad you're here. Now, if your state requires live CEUs, make sure to complete all those modules, including complete the course before the end of today. Now, we really love your comments, your questions, interacting with you. So please use your chat today. Use the chat with your questions and comments. But also, to get us started, I want to know where you're at. So everybody that's here live, please jump in the chat and give us where you're at. While you're doing that, I'm going to go through our disclosures. For me, I am a salaried employee of Portland Public Schools in Oregon. I am a co-founder of A Place to Start Therapy, and I receive a compensation from Speech Therapy PD for hosting School of Speech, which I still can't believe I get to do. Michele is the single member of SLP Madness and receives income through the sales that she makes through SLP Madness with no relevant non-financials relationships to disclose. Okay, disclosures done. All right. Check. Let's move it along, people. Move it along. Nothing else to see. Okay, Michele. I love when hearing about people's journeys. I want to know where you came from, how you got here, what's happening, because you have been a school-based SLP for over, I'm not trying to date you. Like,
that's okay. Date.
I'm not.
It is what it is. Go ahead and date me.
You've been working for over 2 decades, and you
Yes.
are still working full-time in an elementary school while also supporting SLPs through SLP Madness. How? And tell us your journey. Tell us how you got here. And also and your passion for data systems. Come on.
So I first want to say hi to everybody who is here live. I was looking kind of where you all come in. Just so it seems that a lot of you are on the West Coast, but for the few folks I saw New Jersey, I saw Pittsburgh. I am on the East Coast. I am in a suburb outside of Philadelphia. So to those of you that are listening live and on the East Coast, thank you for joining us at the end of your day. And to everybody else, thank you for joining as your workday concludes. Thanks for jumping on and learning with us. But as Carolyn said, I am a full-time school-based SLP. That has always been my heart. That is the setting I always knew I wanted to work in, and have had the luxury of, except for maybe my first year and a half, I have been in the same school district my entire career. So I have the benefit of working in what is the third largest school district in Pennsylvania. So behind Philadelphia and behind Pittsburgh, my suburban school district is the third largest. So we have our department has grown over the years. I would say maybe we're about 30 individuals right now. But my passion has obviously always been the littles, has always been the therapy. And early on in my career, I used to say, well, if I could just have a job where I could, make materials to support teams, if I could make things to support kids. And over time, that's really where SLP Madness was born. And a lot of things that I have created for myself out of necessity, I have worked to shape and into, like you mentioned, having systems that work to allow us to do the job. If any of you are out in Facebook groups, obviously there is lots of discussions about the overall workload, our paperwork, the evaluations, the qualifications of kids. And while there's often questions about therapy, like what would you do in this case? What's your tip or trick for this? Most of the discussion, and I'll use the word complaining, but not in a negative way, but a lot of the discussion that goes on is how do we do it? How do you manage all the things that come with the job? And so while I would say I got into this job because I wanted to be a therapist, and I'm going to assume for most of you out there, that is the same case. None of us really realized all the other job titles
Preach,
that we're
preach.
required,
Yes.
right, Carolyn? Like all the other things,
Right?
the scheduler, the secretary, the report writer. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
we could go on. I'm sure you could add to the list of that, but really all of the other things, and just helping, SLPs, mentoring, students in grad school, mentoring CFYs, mentoring people, in my department, and just really kind of helping therapists figure out what they can do to manage their workload life so that it does not overwhelm and detract from the best part of the job, which is working with the kids.
I hear you. I think we all have come into this profession because we truly love seeing the change and the impact that we have. We were talking earlier about I was in a meeting, an IEP meeting, and it was so amazing, and it really filled me with joy, realizing this job chose me, and I absolutely love this job. But at the same time, I have this data, there's so many other things that I'm having to do besides just working with the students. Like you think that's all we want to do is work with the students. But what we have to do, it's so much well, especially in the schools, anywhere you go, there's data and there's soap notes and, insurance and stuff in the outside world. But in
Correct.
school,
Yes.
if you don't have data, it didn't happen.
Oh, you literally, I mean, you literally just took the words out of my mouth. Like if you don't have the documentation, it didn't happen.
Right. And that's where it gets messy because, I mean, we are, again, we are flipping hats. We're consulting, we're scheduling, we're making a phone call, we're counseling, we're doing all the things. And we're trying to keep track of, okay, we're writing a therapy note. Wait, we got to track IEP progress. I mean, it can really become really a blur, right?
Yes, it is super daunting, very overwhelming. And I would say, like, we're the general practitioner, right?
Yes.
I don't know
Yep.
if you've ever felt envious of the idea
Of being,
of a speech pathologist who specializes in, I just do speech sound disorders, or I just do this, and you can handpick your clients. You know, we get everybody. We
yep.
don't get to handpick our clients, and we jump the cognitive load that's
Mhm.
required to go from this language group to this fluency to this speech sound disorder to this over here throughout the day, right? And do it in a way where children are learning, right?
Mhm.
It's happening, they're learning, you're documenting, all of those things. The cognitive load for that is real. I mean, it is why people talk about the burnout. But I would love to say that, like, yes, 26 years in a school, all in elementary. I have been in, I don't even know. It would be two hands at this point how many elementaries I've been in our district, either full-time or part-time. But it's it's why we do what we do, but there are so many other things that come with that job. It's why the overwhelm is so real.
How many of us out there are spending our own time, hours doing paperwork? I mean, everyone's going to be like, yeah, I don't lie. We all have to do it, and we shouldn't. I understand. So let's talk about pitfalls. Like, okay, what are we doing wrong? And okay, we're not doing it wrong. What can we do better? Is there
Okay, so I'll start with, again, I remember what my days were like back in graduate school, and I know from mentoring, students in recent years, there are some things about grad school programs that have not changed, right? Times have changed, grad school programs haven't, and I know, and I'm sure many of you were, I was taught that you take data every session, you chart everything that's happening that you're doing, plus or minus everything in the middle of your therapy every day, every kid, no matter how big your group size is. So I would say the first pitfall is a function of what we were taught.
Mhm.
But we'll use the terms and we'll start to talk, we'll dive in a little bit, but there is a very significant difference between therapy charting
Okay.
and data collection probing.
Ooh.
And that to me is one of the biggest pitfalls or the biggest mindset shifts that a lot of therapists have to make when they want to be able to clean up their data, clean up their documentation, and as a result, make their therapy better, make them more present in their therapy, and as a result, make your therapy better.
Okay. Where do you think we are spending unnecessary time?
Well, I would say any charting that you're doing every therapy session is unnecessary time
Thank you.
because teaching is teaching and testing is testing, and they are two totally different things. And they shouldn't happen simultaneously,
Say that
right? If
one
you
more time. Say that one more time. Test. Yeah, sorry.
teaching is teaching
Okay.
and testing is testing,
Thank you.
and they are two distinct actions, right? They should not happen. And certainly there are exceptions. You could be doing some dynamic assessment, you could be doing some checks in your evaluation. But I'm talking about kids on your caseload that you are seeing on a regular basis. Just like a teacher doesn't simultaneously test the kids, right? They might be looking for informal checks, right? But they're not giving the test at the same time that they're teaching the content. So we need to, as therapists, start to separate out. Therapy is one thing that happens one day or several weeks of your month. And then the data collection, the assessment portion, the informal IEP progress monitoring happens separate from that, and it happens at another point in your month. They don't happen, they don't coexist, or they shouldn't coexist. And if they do right now for you, I would challenge you to start to shift and think of things differently. And when you separate them out and you have your therapy, your direct instruction, and then you have your IEP progress monitoring probes, your therapy becomes stronger and your data collection becomes stronger. And there are some, great those to me are those are the two great benefits, right? We know our kids are making progress, but like you said, Carolyn, at the beginning, if we don't have the data, if we don't document it, it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so just because we say so, unfortunately, isn't isn't enough, right? We have to have the documentation to back
Right.
that up.
I mean, the struggle's real. Also, especially, with advocates out there and they're saying we want to see your we could say, yeah, they're making progress and they're going to show us the money. Right. But okay, I want to back up because I love what you are talking when you are separating things. I want you, do you mind, could we really delve in? I need you to say more words around the difference between therapy charting and data collection probes.
Okay. So definitely. So you had asked, right, some of the pitfalls. So I'm
Yeah.
going to start to talk about what a lot of clinicians do in
Okay.
terms of therapy charting, right? They're working with their student, they're prompting, they're modeling, they're scaffolding, they're presenting whatever stimuli, whatever goal content area they're working on, whether it's language or articulation, and they're presenting with cues, right, and models, and they're charting a therapy chart. Plus it's correct, minus it's not, and maybe you were listing some sort of prompt level you had to give the child, right? You're using a variety of different materials. One day you pull this set of cards off the shelf. The next day you pull these worksheets that you have. So the stimuli in which you're presenting to the child, as it should be on a day-to-day basis, is different.
Mhm.
But then you are charting the results of different material. So that would be, I sometimes like use the analogy of, you know, uh, teachers are giving, a spelling test and they're teaching long vowels, right? They're teaching long A. So they do, but then they throw in long E and long I, and and they muddy the waters. And
Mhm.
so that they're not able to compare apples to apples. And what I mean by that, so now I'm going to shift over to what I would advocate for in terms of how you collect your data is using data collection progress monitoring probes. And when I use the word probe, it is a dedicated set of whether it's 5 items, 10 items, 20 items, however many you need, you want, and it should match how your goal is written. But it is a dedicated set of stimuli that you use to assess a specific goal with a specific child. So different than I'm working with my student, I'm charting, I have this word, I have that word, I have this word. And it happens during the course of therapy. Therapy charting, when I do it, I collect data once a month on every goal for every student. And
Okay.
it is again separate from my therapy. It happens on it. I call it my data week. And so there is not a whole lot of direct instruction that happens that week. All of my students rotate through either one-on-one or two-on-one with me if they have different goal areas at the table. I collect my data on their IEP goals with a specific set of stimuli. This probe, the probe that I assess them with, is the same probe I used to gather their IEP goal baseline. So
Okay.
when you talk about documentation, obviously we need to show that our students are making progress. We want to show that our students are making progress. But if you use, when you therapy chart, these 5 words this week, right? And let's say they get 5 out of 5. And then the next week you use a different 5 words and they get 2 out of 5. Well, what happened there? Right? Did they regress, or do they not have the prior knowledge, or the stimuli that you used on that given day was different, and that's the variable that you didn't control for. And so now sometimes you get data that goes up and down, sometimes you get data that goes up and then shoots down, and it's the stimuli you're using that is the changing variable
Mhm.
and not the progress or lack thereof that your student is making. So if you start your evaluation, you identify a need based on any assessment you're giving. Let's say it's the self, right? You identify on word structure. There's some morphology and grammar and syntax you need to look at. Well, I would say that if you're writing a goal based off just of a standardized test, eh, that's a no-no,
Yeah.
right? You need to dig deeper, right? You need to do some informal assessment. You need to give a 10-item probe of irregular verbs, right? Was it just that they missed that on their standardized assessment? Or when you give them a 10-item probe of irregular past tense, they only get 2 correct. And this would be something you're asking them to do independently, absent of your prompts, models, or scaffolding. And then you go, okay, right, they can only do it 2 out of 10 times. This is a goal area that I need to write for. Well, that informal probe that you did as part of your evaluation now becomes your baseline and your goal. You teach it. You teach it with every little worksheet, every card, every stimuli you have at your hands, anything you want on those 3 weeks of the month. But when you come back to collect your data on that IEP goal, you are going to go back to that same set of 10. It is an apples to apples comparison. And when you start to do that, I mean, we're not in it to make us look good, but I'll tell you, when you sit down at the table and you present that data to your team, they're like, "Ooh, she or he's doing some good things in that room. Look at the progress that kid is making." Because you're teaching it with a wide variety of stimuli, but when you go to progress monitor, you're picking the same set of stimuli so that on day 1 for that baseline, on day 100, it's the same assessment. And so that you can then truly say, my child made progress. Whereas if you therapy chart and you bounce around like a ping pong ball, right? One day they're up, one day they're down, one day they're off the table, one day they're on the table. Whatever it is, you haven't controlled a variable that is going to influence or impact how their progress looks from week to week or month to month.
I am loving this. One of our listeners, Kristen, I am with you. This is life-changing. I love what you're saying, because what you're telling us is and it's true, because I know if we show data like every single time, like why did they have it here and they didn't have it here and it's all over the place? Well, the reason is because your stimuli was different. Like we didn't have the control, and this is huge. This is huge. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm looking at, Kristen said, like my district really wants data every session.
So let's
Right.
talk to that.
And this comes up a lot, right? I am fortunate enough. My direct supervisor, we don't have a direct supervisor that is a speech pathologist. We are fortunate enough that our direct supervisor does listen and does understand. But I guess I would ask the question back, is like, is every special educator taking data on every IEP goal for their students every time they teach them? And I would also advocate for the fact that we are remediating a developmental skill.
Mm-hmm.
We are remediating something that did not happen in natural development, and that is not the same, nor is the same progress expected when as compared to somebody who's teaching a skill that is inherently taught and learned, like reading and writing and math. There's a distinct difference between what we do as clinicians, which is also why when they call me a speech teacher, it's like, I don't know if anybody else feels like nails on the chalkboard, right? We're not teachers. We are educators, but we are clinicians. We are a therapist.
We are
And a
pathologists.
speech pathologist, and our job is to work ourselves out of a job. And
yes,
we
amen.
do that well. We can do that when we have the data to back it. But when we don't have the data to back what our recommendation is, right? I know all of you have been called on the carpet or questioned aggressively at times, right, by team members who don't agree with you. And some of those team members can often be your colleagues, which is very unfortunate and in a very bad, feels really terrible when that happens. But when you can confidently speak from a place and feel at the table really good about the information you're presenting, because you know how consistent you were, how you were able to collect it on a monthly basis on a regular interval, and you were able to chart that progress over time for that skill. Yes, we know generalization is always an issue, but we have control over what happens in our space, right? And that's what we're looking to measure. So you will feel a whole lot better at the table when you have documentation and data to support that.
I'm dying, because everything you're saying really dovetails so nicely with last week's episode. If you did not hear last week, which was on goal writing beyond 80% over 3 charted opportunities, like that's one of the problems, is how you write your goal. So I want everyone to, if you were not with me last week, well, I'm sad for you, because it was amazing. I need you to go back and listen, because it really will make you think about how you're actually writing your goals, that you're and what you're looking for your probes. But this is amazing, Michele. I think this is like making me really think about being a pathologist and really having that control of how we're taking our data. This is I'm sorry, Mike, your mic drop right now. I mean, unbelievable. So when they're asking, I'm thinking that if your district you need to have data every session, yeah, you could have your notes that the student needed this scaffolding, they needed this kind of prompt, working on this. This is what we worked on. This is the goal we worked on. And how they did, using how much support they needed for it. But then that's not what and then your probe, that is so powerful.
So do you mind, Carolyn, if I'll just talk about what my
Oh, yes,
system looks like, just
yes,
to
no,
talk, no, just
yeah.
to kind of answer that question. So I was going to say exactly what you say. So my documentation system, I use digital systems because there are time-saving features and automation that can happen when you go digital. Now, we all learned in 2020 why you need to be able to access things at any time, anyway. But the shift for me, if I back up for a second, was a few years before 2020, we had a school building that had a fire, like an elementary school, like a real fire. And there was a section of the building that was shut down for, I mean, 6 or 7 months. That part of the building actually housed the speech therapist's office. And at that time, most of it, I had my color coded folders, and Monday was red, and, Tuesday was yellow, and all my paper data sheets were in there. And when this therapist couldn't get into her office and it became progress report time, I thought, oh my God, what do you do? Like, it literally, I don't want to say it went up in smoke because that sounds terrible, but it was literally drenched, like from the sprinklers, her section. It was gone. It evaporated into thin air. And all I thought was, oh, I'm never going to let that happen to me. That's never going to happen. And so in that moment, I started transitioning myself to digital systems. And over the years, and I'll tell you, every year, I find one more nugget of automation and one more way that I can save 30 seconds here. But if I save 30 seconds on one kid and I have a caseload of 50, then that means over the course of my week, I'm saving 25 minutes in my schedule.
Nice.
So automation, so my system has a spot for just what you were describing, activity notes and logs,
Mhm.
right? So I'm not writing a long anecdotal note, but I am writing an anecdotal note about what we did, what prompt level, if I needed, if there was if it's a speech sound disorder, if I found a facilitative context that is working for that student, um, kind of where we left off, the date, how many minutes, whether it was like a small group or individual session. I have an attendance calendar in there. And then I have a tab in the spreadsheet, and each tab is that student's goal or their goals. So each goal has its own tab, starts with their baseline. And then once a month, I double click, I add the date. Again, seems silly, but a date picker and a calendar popping up and being able to just click that date and having it drop in for you versus having to, I don't know about you, but I'm always like, what day is it? Right? Having to look and then type that in. There are little time savers, and then a masterful system for me as our trimester just finished is that my data sheets are set up to automate my progress report data. So I'm on trimesters. Our secondary schools are on quarters. But basically what it does is it compiles as it auto totals for me in September, they were 3 out of 10. In October, they were 5 out of 10. It auto totals. And then it takes all of that data and it plugs it into one nice box for me. And I control C copy and control paste into my progress report. I do a couple little formatting things, and my progress reports are done, I mean, in a fraction of the time. And so I know that every school district is different, and what every state requires and every district requires from their therapists is different. But over the years, we've gone from less anecdotal notes because they tend to get you in trouble when lawyers look at them, and more strict data numbers. And so I pretty much am able to copy and paste it into my students every trimester. And like I said, I reformat wording in their goal from like remove the word will and say what they are currently doing in the present tense. And my progress report is done with the click of a button.
We all want to be you right now. We all,
And all of these things, I mean, built out of necessity, right? Out of how am I gonna have longevity in this career,
Mhm.
right? It's ironic that years ago, I when I coined, it was my teachers pay teachers store, right? You had to come up with a name back in 2012. I mean, I had no idea, like, but I was like, I need a name, right? So, but it fits because the madness is real. The madness of what we do is real. And so if you can pick a system and start small and find one thing that works for you that cuts time off your schedule while improving your data collection and your documentation, then the trickle down effect is monumental. Because if you think about it with a student, you start with their evaluation, you write that up. I put in my informal assessments, I put my, their baseline probes in there. That same information is transferred into their IEP goal. That same information is collected every month, is transferred into their progress report. And then when I get to next year's IEP, I take all of that information, I wrap it back in a full circle, right? And then make next year's recommendations. So to me, data is the secret sauce of what we do. It drives everything. It drives, do I pick this kid up on my caseload?
Mm-hmm.
If I do, how many goals am I writing? How much service do they need to meet those goals? And I will say, and I do try to do this at the very beginning when I start with families. Our job is different than a teacher. Our job is to work ourselves out of a job, right? And so I say that right up front. This is not a lifelong service, right? My job is to do a really good job. And if I document really well, right, I can show that I'm doing a really good job. And then eventually I'm going to want to make the recommendation to a team and to parents that their child's ready for exit. And if I have really good documentation that has come full circle year after year and into that last year, I'm going to be able to make that recommendation with confidence, and families are going to receive it in a way that they understand and are willing to then, like, as they say, lose that safety net, right? Like I always say we're like the whoopee. We're the blanket that nobody wants to let go of.
Yes, yes. They do not, well, because we're fabulous. And we all know that. And
That is
but
true.
so, and it is true. I love, and we need to remind ourselves, we need to do such a good job that we work ourselves out of a job. But I think everyone here, because we've got people jumping in the chat talking about, okay, we heard documentation, digital, we're listening, we want more. What can we step back a minute? I mean, because I think we're all on, okay, we understand that we've got to take documentation. We can maybe go back and talk about also how do you document your daily notes. But let's start with setting up digital, because I think that's a huge time saver for us. And that's what you're going, that's what I'm heard. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
So let's get
So I personally recommend, whether it's Excel or Google Sheets, I mean, I recommend a spreadsheet, right? Because you can replicate that over time. And when you find something that works for you, you can, in a spreadsheet, you can duplicate tabs, you can hide tabs, you can make it as flexible for you as you want. And then you, again, look for those opportunities to save time. So my data sheets, I used to highlight the cells in a color because it was prettier. Well, now I use the checkbox, right? So I just click and it gives me a check and it totals for me at the bottom. So I always say when people start to make that transition, I say start small.
Mhm.
And my recommendation always is pick the family and the child that you might be most worried about being litigious. Start with the one that you think you need the tightest documentation for.
Okay.
And I also make the recommendation that when you start to roll this out, like now, it's the middle of the year, right? You're not going to redo every system smack dab in the middle of the year.
Right.
But depending upon your district, I will say that I used to, years ago, my data sheets ran the school year. So I would create new data sheets for every school year. And then again, as I get smarter and try to work smarter, not harder, I had the epiphany a few years ago, like, why am I doing that? They don't have to go Why wouldn't it go IEP year? Why do I have to create all new spreadsheets at the beginning of a new school year? I don't. My documentation cycle runs IEP year. So now I make my data sheets. I write a new IEP. I write that goal. I immediately paste it into my data sheet. So I would suggest that as you have IEPs coming due right now in the school year, that you pick a handful of kids that you could start this with. So I will say people are like, how do I even start? Now, I will say you can go find me. Like my things are out there, right? You can go buy them, but you can do this yourself and find a system that works for you if you want to craft and figure out the dynamic and the pieces like of what your district says you have to have, right? Because every state has different regs and every district has different requirements. Um, but I would say start small because again, you're trying to reduce overwhelm,
Right.
not cause overwhelm. And so I love when a therapist wants to jump like both feet in and they're like, I'm in, I'm ready. How do I go? But I say like, let's start with
Yeah,
one.
let's slow down.
Let's pull it back a little bit. Let's start with one, right? And get a little bit more comfortable with that.
So Kristen,
Because there is a learning curve to anything you do new. If
yeah,
you're used to a paper system, shifting to a digital system takes some time.
because we have to learn a new system. And Kristen had a good question. So for clarity, does each student have their own spreadsheet?
So for me, yes.
Because
And I
their
do that.
dates are going to be different because it's their IEP cycle. So you couldn't
It
have
is their IEP cycle. And I
every.
also do that from a legal standpoint because if I am called to produce documents
Mhm.
for a
Open
student,
records, yes.
open records, I don't want to have a mix of students' records in the same file because anything with a student's name is part of at least in part of I don't know if is part of Pennsylvania student
I
record.
I think that's global, or I mean
I do
that's
think it
national.
is, but
Yeah,
I
if
didn't
their
want to
name
speak
is on it, it's
incorrectly.
part of their record.
And so I don't want anybody else's data or information getting tangled in and tied up and being sent somewhere that it shouldn't be sent.
Okay.
So each child has their own spreadsheet. Within that spreadsheet, like I mentioned, is an activity log tab where I write anecdotal notes, an attendance calendar where I track their attendance. So like I don't know how many of you, but this has happened to me where a parent asks or a supervisor asks how many of their sessions this year did they get,
Yep.
right? I have everything on one sheet. Quick count color coded. I saw them this day, this day, this day. They missed X number of sessions because I was unavailable. They missed X number of sessions because they were absent. And again, it's a quick hit rather than running through like my activity log and counting every day. And then each goal has its own sheet
Okay.
within that spreadsheet. So each kid has one spreadsheet. I will say the other thing I do, and this is like, gets a little bit more advanced, but if you're like a digitally savvy person, you may do this for other things. I have, again, a time saver, save 5 minutes every morning. I have my data sheets tabbed together in my web page. So I, with one click, open up my entire Monday schedule and every kid's sheet opens up. On Tuesday, so there's no like running through, oh, I have Johnny Smith today, let me find him, click, let me open his data sheets. Let me go find Amelia, let me click Amelia's data sheet. So as my schedule gets set, um, they're grouped and tabbed together and basically like digital file folders, right? I open up the folder and all of their sheets for the day open for me.
Mhm. So, yeah, so you're linking, so your schedule, their spreadsheet is, you've linked their spreadsheet to your schedule so that on Monday, you know that your first group has these 4 students and those names, their spreadsheets linked to their name. I'm seeing,
So yeah, I have it. Yes, I have it linked. Actually, I have a digital, I use a OneNote. So each kid has
Oh,
their own tab in a OneNote and their spreadsheet is linked there. But when I open, like we're a Microsoft school. So when I open Microsoft Edge, I basically have all the Monday kids bookmarked together
okay.
in one folder. So I open that bookmark folder and I right click and I say open all and it says, do you want me to open all 15 tabs? And I say, yes, I do. And it populates every kid I'm going to see on that given day with one open.
And then, right, so you've got all those
And
tabs.
then they just run across the
Then you just
tabs
close.
and close them out as I go. They're in order of my day. Um, Again, think of it like the old color, the old folders, right? You'd
Yeah.
have all Monday stacked together, all Tuesday stacked together, everything in their folder. It's the same organization system. It's just the digital version. The other thing I will say is like, I don't know how many times you've gone home and been like, oh my gosh, I don't have their paperwork. I have to write their IEP. I left it at school. Well, guess what? You have a digital form. You can get that from anywhere in the world. There's no leaving between schools when you travel. There's less lugging.
Mhm.
There's no worrying about, oh my God, I didn't bring their file home. It's all available at your fingertips whenever you need it and wherever you are.
Okay,
And so
so
that is another huge benefit.
I'm loving this. So your folders literally are your digital folders. I got it now. Sorry. I'm sorry, old dog.
That's okay. I don't always do the best job because like
No.
I know what it looks like. And so sometimes
So
I don't do
inside,
the best
yeah.
job of
So you're
communicating on
literally,
my end what it actually in fact is.
yeah. So I'm just gonna walk myself through this. So like my Monday folder, which was red, um, would be on my desktop, and that's Monday's folder. And inside Monday's folder, it's all my kids, and then boom, open. There they all are. Got
Yes.
it. Okay.
But
I just
in
make
the
sure.
in the
In
web
the web,
browser. Yep.
in the web browser. Okay. We have we do, let's see, we've got some questions coming in. Um uh we answered that yes, Kristen, each child does have their own spreadsheet. Kristen's asking about some good resources for progress monitoring. She has a few good different ones from different resources, but do you have some of your favorites and how could we access those?
Okay. So I will say that yes, I have ones that I have created. I will say there are also subscriptions out there. They're kind of expensive.
Okay.
Um that give you access to probes, but like a yearly subscription on our budget is sometimes not in the budget.
Mhm.
So I do have probes that I've created, and then I'm going to be honest, I'm going to just kind of say it like it is. We all have certain areas that we feel as clinicians are more important or bigger bang for your buck when
Mhm.
you work with kids, right? Like there are so many one of the greatest things about our job is that it's endless and we get to decide what we're going to work on. But that's also sometimes one of the worst things or challenging things about our job, right? How do you sift through and figure out? So we all have things that we value and we think gives our kids the best impact for matching what they're doing in the curriculum. So I would say that you probably have a goal style, right? That is consistent, uh,
Mhm.
not identical, but certain areas, like if you're language processing hierarchy skills, like I believe are crucial and critical for my language impaired kids. So, having a set of probes that start with, identifying by function and associations and what doesn't belong and categorization, similarities and differences, all of those things. I, over the years, have created those. They are available. The other resource that I will tell you that is free to download, and it is a research-based resource, is amazing. Cubed 3, CUBED-3. It is a narrative language measure that gives you by grade benchmark assessments
I'm going to pop it in
similar
the
to.
chat. Tell me if I did it right. Cubed like that. Cubed.
Yes, yep, cubed like that. Yes. And I'm trying to remember the name of the company, but if any of you use Story Champs as
Yes.
like the narrative language kit, it is the company that creates Story Champs. So it is benchmark assessments that are similar to like a Dibbles benchmark assessment that your students would be given for reading skills. And then it has progress monitoring probes that are formatted for you to give every month.
Oh,
So in that, they're listening to a story, they're retelling the story with story grammar elements, they're answering comprehension questions, you're listening to see if they use specific higher level vocabulary that's included. There's explicit questions and there's implicit questions. And it gives you the progress monitoring probe. So you could use those for retail, certainly, right? And you can use that for, but even if you just want story comprehension, because I did see one of the questions that I get often, and I can't see, I'm looking at whose name it was. Oh, CCS, like how do we know if their progress is that it's gains or that they're becoming familiar with probes? And I would
yeah.
say that story comprehension is the only thing that I really feel like familiarity can bleed into false progress,
Mm.
because I'm not correcting a student when I probe their skill. I ask them, I take their answer, I tell them great job, and I move on. So they're getting no feedback from me whether their answer is correct or incorrect. So if a kid doesn't know 2 + 2, it doesn't matter how many times you ask them 2 + 2. If they say 3 because they don't know the answer, they still always say 3. Your repetition of that question does not make them any more accurate unless you tell them the answer. And so when you're probing, if I wasn't clear about that to begin, you're not telling them correct or incorrect. You're not prompting them in any way. You're saying, great job, love it. And you're marking it down as incorrect and you're moving on. But as you continue month after month to teach those skills, right, you should see their accuracy of that, whether, similarities and differences, very simple. How are a hospital and a house the same, right? And they should be able to get to, they're both buildings, they're both places. And so
But you're not teaching to the probe. Your probe is what you are testing to. This is the
correct,
big distinction. So we're not teaching to the test. So it's not like we take all the answers from the self and we teach how to how to ace the self.
right,
Right?
correct.
Right. So
Exactly
the
that.
probes are what we're using to chart and to document the gain, because when we're probing, it's just like we're doing an assessment. We're not saying, oh no, try again.
Right.
Right?
Well,
Yeah.
I also, I think I referenced like spelling tests before, like old school
Mhm.
spelling tests. When I was in school, they gave you 10 words. It was learn these 10 words,
Yes.
and here's your pre-test on Monday. And on Friday, it's the same set of 10 words. That is teaching to the test, right?
Mhm.
Now, right, they teach you a rule.
Mhm.
Here's the rule I'm going to teach you. Here's the spelling rule. And now, can you apply that right on the test at the end? And that's really what we're doing, is like we're teaching the concept, we're teaching the skill, we're varying, right? Even you hear in articulation in speech sound disorders, you need variable practice, right? It's
Mhm.
not the same thing every time. You have to vary your instruction, you have to vary the practice, again, which is going to facilitate generalization.
I was
But
just
it's
saying, yes, that's where you're going. How can they generalize if they can only do it in this
right,
one way with this one set of cards?
right,
No. And you hit something that I think bears repeating. We are not teachers, we are pathologists. So we aren't here to teach vocabulary. We are, or whatever it is that we're, yeah, vocabulary is to do that.
yeah,
We're teaching a rule, we're teaching a strategy, we're teaching the concept. And we're using those 10 or 20, whatever your probe number is,
whatever it is, right,
to chart our progress. But what our goal is not just they will know these 10 words. It's they will
correct.
know the concept of
Concept of whatever it is. The
whatever.
other thing I would love to make a point too, and I think this is where sometimes we as therapists we miss some of the detail, is that how your goal is written is how you must collect the data
Yes.
and how you must report it. Down to, if your goal is written for percent accuracy, your progress reports better report it in percent accuracy. If
Mhm.
it's written out of 5 trials or out of 10 opportunities, you need to collect it that way and you need to report it that way. Now, we know that 2 out of 10 is 20%, right? Everybody knows that. But if your goal is written for a percentage, it has to be reported and collected as a percentage. And conversely, if it's written out of a number of trials or opportunities, it needs to be reported that way. My plug is, I almost always, unless I'm going for generalization of sounds and connected speech, not 100% of the time, but 98% of the time, I do out of 10 opportunities, because it's semantics, but when the parent hears 2 out of 10, that sounds a whole lot better than 20%. And it's a minor shift.
Mhm.
But again, when I meet with parents, I don't want them to leave the table feeling terrible, or my kid can only do it 10% of the time,
Right.
right? But saying 1 out of 10 it sounds better, in my opinion.
Well, because you're doing the strength,
Or
right?
you're trying, right? You're
Right.
trying to
So,
report from
and
what,
I think also when you have really good data, when you're showing, well, wait, the baseline was they were 0 out of 10.
correct,
They're now 2 out of 10. So we're working.
working up,
We have growth. This is the growth that we're seeing.
right?
Rather
And I
than
think,
I did it this day and this day and not this day and this day and they're over here. Well, why is that? Right? But now you've got steady data that is controlled data. And because you're not, I'm keep going back to that because I think that was my biggest takeaway was sometimes we're taking data, but it can't be true data because the stimulus is different. How we presented
right.
it is different. And so
I
yeah,
Well, I was going to say, I think that the terms that I use often when I talk to people and I present is clean data versus dirty data.
oh, I like it. Tell me more, use more words, say more.
Yeah. So obviously, clean data, right, is that strict apples to apples comparison.
Apples to
I'm comparing the same thing without any influence from myself or the stimuli on, I present it, I take the student's response, and I move on. Dirty data is the data that is influenced by all the extraneous factors. It could be influenced by the stimuli you're using, it's influenced by the prompt that I give. It can be influenced by the student's response next to the student you're
Mm-hmm.
charting.
Sure.
Somebody's already shouted out the answer. They've heard a delayed model. They're then giving it to you. All the variables that happen around that charting, it's dirty data because you can't replicate it. If somebody comes to me and says, Michele, on, March 18th, you had data for this student, they were 7 out of 10 opportunities. How did you collect that data? Man, I can whip that out right away. Here's exactly what I used to collect that data. Whereas if you're therapy charting, no matter how good your note is, there is no way you know what stimuli you used on any given day to
Mhm.
be able to show somebody what you did. I would also say that there are districts who have come and bought for their entire staff my probes. So not only is there consistency within the individual therapist and how they assess, but there's consistency across buildings. And we all know you've inherited an IEP and you go like, one, ooh, how are they measuring that? Or, ooh, they said their progress report said this, but I have them at this. It's discrepant. How do I account for that? So not only when you use probes yourself are you consistent, but you have consistency across therapists in a district across buildings so that when kids move, you inherit a kid, you know exactly what was used to assess that student, and you can pick up right where the other therapist left off.
That's huge. We would love that because how many of us out there get a goal and we're like, first of all, what is this goal asking? Where did this come from? How am I right? I mean, don't lie, y'all. We've all and no
Oh,
shame to anybody because I know I've written goals and it was very clear to me when I wrote it.
1000%.
And so I mean, yeah. So I'm not shaming, but because I'm
Yes.
I'm I'm at I'm at fault here too. But to really think about yeah, writing the goal so that anybody can pick it up. But not only that, the purpose of this is not only that, but that the documentation for that goal is standardized almost, if I
Right.
can use that term. It's
Yes.
clean. I like that
It's
word.
clean.
Clean.
It's clean. The other thing I would love to just jump back to, if I could,
Yes.
is the concept of um, therapy for 3 weeks out of your month and data collection for 1 week out of your month.
Is that
Okay.
different than
And
the 3-1 model?
it is different than the 3-1
Because you're
model,
seeing
not
them
to be
all four.
confused with
Oh,
the
okay.
3-1 model,
Want
because
to make sure.
I refer to it, we don't have a 3-1 model. We're responsible for treating and seeing students all 4 weeks of the month.
Okay.
3-1 model that I'm not referring to, right, is the direct service 3 weeks of the month and indirect service 1 week of the month. But what I suggest is that um, you treat and you instruct
Mm-hmm.
3 weeks out of your month, and 1 week out of your month is your assessment week. And so that is a shift. I will say the best shift is guess what? If you adopt that structure, you have one less week out of your month that you're lesson planning for,
Mm-hmm. And I think
right?
yes, and I am loving this, but I think what we all need to hear is that we do our treating and instructing is just as important than having that daily data.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think that's what I'm really hearing. I think we all need to hear, and that's what we need our admins to understand. And I like the way that you said it, that teachers aren't teaching a skill and immediately testing, right? They're
Right.
scaffolding, they're building on, they introduce the concept. They use different tiers and levels and use whatever the concept they're teaching in all these different ways
Right.
for all our different types of learners,
Mhm.
and then test to see if everybody's gotten. I love this. Yes.
And the other benefit that I love about the shift into this model is that because once you stop charting, once you put the pencil down, you will find that you are so much more present in your therapy, attuned to what your student is doing because your face is up and you are watching them more than your face down at your desk, that it will make your therapy so much better because you're not consumed with doing two tasks at one time. It
Right.
frees you to be fully present and in the therapy and giving every
I
kid every
love this.
prompt, right? Everything they need. You are in it with them for the however whatever their
We're in
30
it
minutes
to win
of
it,
preparation.
people.
In it, yes, in it to win it, right? And
Yes.
then, right, it makes your therapy better because you're so attuned to what they're doing and you're not disconnecting from them, right? So much of what we do is rooted in really strong relationship and connection. And when you keep putting your head down to pay attention to like the piece of paper, it breaks
Yeah.
what's natural, that natural flow that is happening with your students. And so 3 weeks a month therapy, 1 week a month assessment. And I will also say that my routine is like if I have a group and somebody's absent and I get a kid one-on-one, guess what? I scrap that lesson that day and it becomes a day-to-day. I take
Right, wait.
advantage of every opportunity I have to shift kids to collect data when they're by themselves because we know that that doesn't happen often. And certainly talking about how I run
Mhm.
that, right? Because that's the next question is like, what does everybody do, Michele, when you're collecting data. There are some really simple things. I'll give the quick highlights are if you have any, we all love a good craft, right? We love a good hands-on activity. Any coloring, any craft assembling that happens on their independently while I'm assessing a kid. So the instruction of that activity, that lesson happens with me either the week before or the week after. But the acts of coloring, the acts of cutting, the acts of gluing, those things happen on their own, right? While they're in the room with me, while I'm assessing kids. If it's articulation, I assess them in a group. If it's language, I almost always assess them one-on-one. I utilize boom cards. I utilize books on tape on YouTube, right? So they listen to the story on their own, and then they come back to the table with me, and we do the lesson that associates with that story. There are lots of things that you're naturally doing in your environment that some of those things students could do independently, with you, in the room while you're assessing, and they just kind of rotate at the table to the next activity, come back to the next student
Kind of
comes
like
to the
zones.
table.
There's you've got you have zones set up, and you can bring out, and that they're actively working on their goal.
Correct.
Right, and then you're able to then do the one-on-one with however many you have in your group. But I like what you said, that if you do, and we all want the step-by-step for everything. Like you do this, do this, do this. Like you teach and instruct for 3 and you assess them on 4. But then you're saying, once you get that mindset, that's kind of the rhythm, the vibe we want, we got to be able to shift and pivot. Because if you have that opportunity that you have 1 kid or 2 kids instead of 5, that is shift and do your data then. So I love that I love that we need to think systematically, but we also need to be flexible and really utilize our time, because again, this is about saving us time.
Right.
Right.
And when you get good at this, right, that's like inherently where the time it builds over time. I know we're at the end, and I see Kristen's comment about feeling like you need to get 8 kids to 80% in one day.
Yeah.
I would say that if we could get kids to 80% in one day, they wouldn't need an IEP goal.
Why were they with us? Yeah.
It's an annual goal. It's an annual goal. It is steps up rungs of a ladder. It might be 80% with you giving them a full model, but if that goal is written for independence, I don't really care that they can do it 80% with me, right? The goal is for them to do, I want to know what can they do on their own, right?
Yeah.
So like that's the 80% with me is what happens in the therapy, right? I want them to be successful, right? I need to give them what they need in order to be successful. But when I'm assessing them, I need to know what can they do on their own.
Right.
And
so your anecdotal notes, your daily, is that they were at 80, but they were max assist with
correct.
all your prompts. But then, but our probe is really where we want to be at their end result. And so we can show growth 2 ways, right? You're showing growth, with a lot of supports they are getting there. This is where we are with our end result, and I love it. And I know, I can't believe we do. I could, like I said before we even got started, I know that I never want this to ever end. One last question: can you spend another moment reviewing how to document the session when there's not data during those 3 weeks? Wait, I'm not sure I understand that question.
Yeah, I want to see this to the end. Can you send that out?
Yeah. Kristen, say that again using different words, and we'll come back to it. Alan is concerned about schedule. I want to see this to the end and value this course. Oh, no, we do need to end. Sorry, Alan. Yeah, we are going to close it. I know everybody's time is precious, and we have kind of gone over, and I do want to respect that. So I'm sorry, Kristen, that we didn't understand your question. If you reach out to me, I will try to get that question answered for you.
Right. And I was going to say, you guys can always reach out to me. I will say I'm a Michele with 1 L, so that is different. But my email is michelle@slpmadness.com. I'm sure in the show notes it'll have ways that you can get to me. But that is my email, and I
Is
do
it
try
Michelle
to.
at SLPmadness dot what?
Um,
Okay, there we go.
yeah. Oh, thank you. I
All
could have
right.
done, yeah.
Well, we do need to say goodbye, and I am so sad. Because like I said, I never want these to end because I'm learning so much. And you can tell we've had so much interaction. I want to thank everybody. First of all, I want to thank you, Michele. I mean, spending your time, giving your time for us. This has been unbelievable. I know, again,
Thank
you
you for having me.
no, you have been amazing. Everyone is thank you. I want to thank everybody that comes and listens, and you're here to grow. And thank you for all the work that you're doing every day. If you like what we do here at School of Speech, give us a like, tell your friends about it, tell everybody about it. If you are, all you guys, all y'all that are listening live, I want you learning counts. So I want to make sure you get your ASHA CEUs. So do not go past go. I want you to go immedately to your account and fill out those modules so you get your CEUs. All right. Okay.